Okay. I'm doing a history project that poses the question, how does character, either good or ill, have an effect on modern world history? To evaluate this subject, I have researched Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, and Saddam Hussein, all of whom I consider to have poor character. I decided to interview soldiers with first-hand experience in seeing the consequences on the average person who lived through the trying times of these leaders. In the case of Joseph Stalin, I chose to interview a soldier who witnessed the effects of Ho Chi Minh, who traveled to Europe to study Stalin and Lenin and their political philosophies and brought those philosophies back to Vietnam. I am planning to ask you open-ended questions and welcome all your thoughts as they come to you. Please tell me what branch of the armed services and wars that you served in.
I was in the United States Army, and I served in the Republic of Vietnam in 1971.
Okay. What did you see happen to the common person in Vietnam? Please describe your experiences.
What I saw happen to the common person in Vietnam?
Yeah.
Well, I saw a lot of Vietnamese villagers who were displaced, were kicked out of their villages because of bombing, because of night raids by the DC. Saw lots of children and women and men included who were killed and maimed and injured by the effects of napalm and bombs and booby traps. I spent a lot of time in the jungle, basically living in the jungle, so we came in contact a lot with mountain yards. They were primitive villagers who lived in the central highlands up in the mountains, and usually they were deserted because they had been removed by, I'm not sure if it was the United States military that moved them or Vietnamese government. They were expatriated, they were taken out of there and moved to special camps so that they wouldn't be killed or harmed or mistaken for the enemy, because they were generally docile people who weren't really involved in the war. And I saw a lot of children suffering. I saw children eating out of garbage dumps because the food source wasn't available for them, and because war had taken such a toll on their families.
Okay.
And I had the honor to work with people who had defected from North Vietnamese side to the South Vietnamese side. We basically called them, they were called two hoys. And they were Vietnamese, Viet Cong, North Vietnamese soldiers who had decided that they could not fight under the conditions that they were living and didn't believe in the cause. And a lot of them were taken at night and forced at gunpoint to serve as VC, or their families would be killed. So I met them, and it affected them greatly.
Okay.
They had to choose one side or the other, and they chose to fight for the South Vietnamese, which at the end didn't serve them well, because we left them behind, most of them.
Oh. How did those experiences affect you and others around the world?
I can't really speak for others, but I can speak for myself, and I became very disillusioned with politics and the way this country handled dealing with other countries and the intervention in other countries' civil wars, which really brought on more suffering for the South Vietnamese than I believe that they would have had to go through had they just given in or worked it out as they did in North Korea and South Korea. Tremendous amount of people lost their lives. Tremendous amount of Vietnamese lost limbs, lost their properties. Tremendous amount of children suffered and were maimed and injured and killed. And it just, it really bothered me. It really bothered me that we as soldiers became, I would say, callous toward the suffering of others. After about 6 months in country, we thought it was great fun to throw candy in the rolls of concertina wire and watch the little kids dive in and push each other into it. And they would come out cut up and crying, and we laughed and thought that was the funniest thing in the world. But that was a condition of war. That's basically what you turn into. You become an animal, in a sense, and that translated into more suffering for those people, because after you see a lot of your buddies wounded and die, you just become hardened, and your heart becomes hardened, and it changed me forever. I went from an innocent young Catholic boy to a very angry, bitter, confused person. And I had a hard heart when I came out. I didn't want to become close to anybody. I had a hard time showing love, feeling love. It took me many years to resolve a lot of that. But it changed me forever. I am very skeptical of the government. I am very skeptical of the call to arms, to go to war. They always question their motive. I don't believe the reasons that they give for us to go to war. So, that's how it changed me, basically. I'm just not the same person that I was. I was giving, caring, gullible, friendly, kind, but now, when I came back, I was not that person.
Thank you.
And that's how it changed me. And I know it changed a lot of other people from what I've heard from them dealing with my PTSD.
Do you think the character of the political leaders had an impact on modern world history?
Can you say that one again? I can't hear it.
Do you think the character of the political leaders had an impact on modern world history?
Well, I think the character of the modern world leaders had an impact on history.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. We've had those who are considered hawks, and for some reason or another, seem to think that we need to intervene in every country in the world whenever they have an altercation of some sort. We've built our military to the point that we are considered one of the mightiest in the world, which is not exactly a bad thing, but it also creates an environment where our country thinks that that no one can touch us, that we have the responsibility to go everywhere in the world, that we have the ability to go everywhere in the world, and that the taxpayers will continue to pick up the bill for all of this and be okay with it. And yes, I think it's shaped this country for the worse. We are too aggressive as far as I'm concerned.
Do you think Ho Chi Minh's character had an impact on history?
Oh, absolutely. Ho Chi Minh was a brilliant leader. And if not the history of any other country, especially the history of Vietnam, he was totally and ultimately responsible for their victory. He studied the art of war. He knew what it took to win. He continued to motivate his people when the chips were down and they didn't think they were going to make it. He was brilliant. He was a very smart man, and he won that war with a minimum budget compared to what the United States poured into it. He instilled in his soldiers the heart to continue fighting, and I respect him immensely, and I respected the NBA soldiers immensely. They're very brave, very ferocious fighters.
Why does he think some of Ho Chi Minh's soldiers defected?
Why do you think some of Ho Chi Minh's soldiers defected?
Why? Because of their conditions they were living under. They basically lived in the jungle with a rifle, ammunition, and small amount of rice and whatever they could catch. And they were thousands of miles away from home with no mail, no way of knowing what was happening with their families. They got lonesome, they got homesick, they got tired of living under the filthy conditions that they had to live in, under the entire, and I'm sure some of them were very afraid. They were out there by themselves or with another companion, and the whole entire United States Army and Marine Corps was looking for them. So they, I would say it's mostly conditions that caused them to defect.
How do you think?
And some of them, after being out there for so long by themselves, because they lived out there years at a time away from their families and with very little communication, so they didn't really understand. And after you are separated from your family that long, you tend to have a lot of time to think to yourself, and you begin to weigh your options. And sometimes going to the other side where everybody has all the food and comfort and ammunition that they need, as opposed to living out in the jungle in a bunker in the middle of nowhere with no mosquito lotion, with the leeches and the snakes and the loneliness. I think that is more like why the one that the one that I became friends with, his name was Chen, and the reason he defected was because he did not believe in the cause, and he was very angry with them because they forced him at gunpoint to leave his family and fight for the North Vietnamese side. And so when he had a chance to leave and come to our side when he thought it was safe, that's what he did.
Do you have anything else you would like to add?
No, I don't think so. The only thing I would like to say is that I am very disappointed. Was very disappointed in 1975 when we gave up that country after all the lives that were lost. And the fact that we walked out of there and left so many records behind so that those people who collaborated with us could be easily found and killed, imprisoned, and many of them were. I think it was irresponsible. And I think it was criminal. And that's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing with me.